Hello. Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to be discussing the Junior Master Gardener Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go curriculum. And we just thank you so much for joining us for this training event. If you are an educator for the Out of School into the Garden program, you will have received a curriculum kit from us. And in that kit, we have the Learn, Grow, and Eat, Go curriculum, as well as all the supplemental materials for conducting those activities with your out of school or early childhood classrooms. So as you know, that's a 10-week curriculum. It's hands-on, it's academically rich, and it's garden-based. So what we're going to discuss today is just give you guys the opportunity to see those activities in action. We'll hear from Nick Usabel, who's our expert on this curriculum. And then we'll also have our members of the Out of School into the Garden team help us demonstrate some of these really fun and exciting activities. These ones are some of our favorites that we've handpicked. So so we'll take maybe a moment here to quickly introduce ourselves. And then we'll talk a little bit about what we'll be doing specifically today in this training. And then we'll just jump right into it. So I can begin, and then maybe we'll start with Nick, Ariel, and then Connie after that. So let me start. My name is Alea Schweitzer. I am the program coordinator for the Out of School into the Garden program. And I also coordinate a program called Idaho Farm to Early Care and Education. I am based out of Blaine County Extension in Haley, Idaho. And I'm just, really pleased that everyone could, watch this recording and hopefully get to learn something new about the curriculum itself. And I hope that you have fun today with this training as much as we had fun preparing this training for you. So thanks for being here. Nick, would you like to go next?
Sure. Well, thank you for being here for this recording and watching this later on as we kind of look at what's happening with our Junior Master Gardener program, specifically Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go. I am Nick Usabel, and I am the Horticulture Extension Educator, and I'm located in Canyon County in Caldwell. And so I look forward to sharing one of the lessons with you today on Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go.
Thanks, Nick. And I'm Ariel Agenbrod with the University of Idaho Extension. I work statewide in Farm to School and Farm to ECE, but my office is located in Boise. And I've been using Junior Master Gardener curriculum for about the past 14 years. And I really love this new book and the new activities, some of which are really tried and true JMG activities that have been incorporated into this set of curriculum. So I'll be having fun walking you through another one of the activities today. And I really enjoy that all of you are signed up for this and are part of our Out of School into the Garden program. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Connie May, and I am the Assistant Program Coordinator with Alea Schweitzer. And I am excited to help offer this Out of School into the Garden curriculum to you all. And I hope you enjoy today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. So like I said, we'll just review really quickly what we'll get to talk about today. So Nick will provide an overview of the curriculum itself. Then we're going to move into an activity, the Know and Show Sombrero. And then I will get to lead an activity called Plant Parts We Eat. We'll move then into the paper towel gardening activity. And then Connie will lead us through a tasty recipe called Carrot Crunch. And then after that, if we have some time, we'll get to show you a fun video. And then we'll have a little bit of time at the end for just thanking you guys for being here. So if you're ready to get started, let's do this.
All right, excellent. Well, we're going to move through some of our content today just to kind of look at an overview of the Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go and what that will look like for you as an overview and kind of why this curriculum is helpful in terms of some of the research that's behind it, and then just the outline of that curriculum. So if you choose to run the full 10 weeks of the curriculum, how that would work, but we'll also talk about ways to pick and choose which topics and titles might be of interest to you. So with that, we'll just go ahead and get started here with a little bit of an overview and what that looks like for the benefits of children to kind of be using the JMG curriculum from our mentors and our garden sites that are helping us out with this program. So when you kind of look at the benefits to children, really the Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go allows us the opportunity to kind of increase some opportunities for leadership. So within the curriculum, there's opportunities to do some community development, also some opportunities to really lead, with some activities of their own in the garden, take some pride and ownership, and work to think about the responsibility that it takes to, grow the plants during that growing season. We also find that in the research, there's some improved academic achievement. So as you kind of look back to maybe some of the lessons and as we go through today, you'll start to see that we're asking them to think about other topics, not just gardening, but also looking at mathematics. We're talking about some English components. We're talking about science throughout the curriculum. So it really helps to kind of increase that academic achievement. So not only just looking at that, in the classroom in mathematics or English language arts or science, but we're trying to connect that to something that's more hands-on, maybe pliable, and really kind of connecting those bits and pieces of information. The benefit to looking at the out of school into the garden component and using Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go is that we have the opportunity to have mentors or parents become involved within this program, whether that is in the garden itself or just also looking at donations or activities that you can do during different lessons to have some guest speakers come in or individuals lead specific activities to kind of change it up and have different individuals be the face of who those youth are exposed to. And then there are opportunities to think about career exploration and paths along that, should you choose to look at that, and then continuing on into that community service or service learning activity that, connects to that youth certification. So you don't have to have a youth certification to use the Junior Master Gardener curriculum. Just note that that is an opportunity that you can sign up for and offer certification for those youth to go through the program by completing the entire curriculum, in this case of Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go. So with that, what are some positive impacts that we find within using the Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go curriculum and thinking about the youth, thinking about the family, even thinking about our communities and the overall component that we can pull together within gardening. So really we think about child health and their ability to talk about, what they like to eat and how much they're going to eat. Today, we're going to have the opportunity for Connie to share with us one of the recipes, the cinnamon carrot crunch. And so that's one of the recipes that's included within this curriculum to kind of look at other, side dishes or meals or snacks to use that really are health conscious and kind of thinking about ways to incorporate what we grow into our daily diets. And then, with that, if we think about healthy eating choices, that definitely changes our obesity rates in time. And then also really allows us to, connect with the youth in the classroom or in this demonstration activity and to test these, but then taking that back to their own family, using that for their own health or their own meal times. So really trying to reach into that home with new opportunities and new recipes that are really nice, easy, and simple to recreate at home. And then, why health matters. I'm not going to go through all of these that are here that are bulleted today, but as we think about health in general, most of us know that individuals, whether it's kids, for our youth or our adults, if we're healthy, we spend more time in school or attend school more often, or we attend work more often or more involved in our homes, in our communities throughout. And so really we start to think about why health matters. I kind of, lump it all together in terms of, you're present, you're able to be more involved if you're healthy. And then, you have a lot of opportunities to think about how to expand that to your network of community within your home, within your community garden site that you're currently working with. So those are just a few bits and pieces in terms of why that health matters, kind of some of the research-based information that goes with our curriculum. So we'll talk about some of our primary conclusions here for Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go, which was conducted by Texas A&M University. Just some of the things that they were really looking at to try and identify, what are some of those significant improvements that have happened with youth who are participating in some of the Junior Master Gardener curriculum. The Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go adds that physical activity component. So that's the Go option. We're not really focusing on a lot of the Go activities today, but do note that they are in the curriculum and kind of can be used. I like to use them when I'm teaching in terms of a break activity. So we're talking about and we're working through some options, and then we go to our Go activity that really gets them a chance to, kind of break away from that learning and hands-on piece, but gets out to do the physical activity. We know that vegetable consumption increases and their vegetable preferences will increase. I know from personal experience using the Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go, a vegetable that individuals maybe wouldn't necessarily try or they don't think they like, we always encourage them to at least try. Don't have to eat the whole, fresh sample or the whole, serving of that recipe, but give it a try and see if you do like it. And so to kind of try on that, or try that specific food piece. So really kind of increasing that consumption and preference of what those look like. And then, connecting that to healthy beverage preferences in the curriculum. There is a week where it really kind of focuses on that health and nutrition piece using the My Plate model as well. And then your parent-child cooking, physical activity, and gardening activities. If youth are learning about these activities within your community garden site, we see that transitions to home, creating new gardening activities, doing additional physical activity at home, be that in the garden or some of the fun activities that are in the Go section, and then being able to incorporate those recipes into our home meals as well. And then that last piece really kind of brings together that community component. So whether it's a garden mentor that's coming in to help you along the way, or maybe it's a family member that's coming to help in that garden as well, but really kind of bringing all of those individuals together to provide that positive support for family and then connecting that to health. So the preliminary conclusions were that family-focused garden, that nutrition and physical activity programs really significantly improve the health behaviors in children. And so we say preliminary in this case because that study is still ongoing as they look at the evidence-based research that comes from the Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go from Texas using some of their Texas A&M University sites for this curriculum. So with that, that's kind of just a little bit of history and background in terms of the benefits and that evidence that has been shown, or preliminary information that's been shown. But let's look a little bit in terms of curriculum design. So when we move through the next 10 weeks, we'll talk about it as a 10-week curriculum, but also abilities to pick and choose some of those activities if you're not running through all 10 weeks. So those of you who are part of the Out of School Into the Garden Network, you have the curriculum and the books that go with the Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go. So you are set up with that book that you see there on the right-hand side. So there are 4 kind of areas to the curriculum. The first part is the Learn, and so you'll find all of your lessons and activities under the Learn tab. And so whether you're using that in the classroom or out in the garden as learning components along the way. The next is the ability to grow. So to be able to grow what we talk about and connect that to our community garden sites that are set up and are working. So knowing that Out of School Into the Garden Network is part of looking at that garden site. So be able to grow in the garden. We get to the Eat component. So that's trying all of the fun, fresh, tasty recipes that are included. And so you can find those under the Eat tab, and Connie will be demonstrating one of those. And then last, but definitely not least, is that Go. So being able to get that physical activity as well. So fun ways just to take a break and think about new games and activities that incorporate that physical activity along the way. So that's kind of the rough basic outline of the 4 areas within the book. The next piece is to look at what does that base curriculum look like? And we say base curriculum because there are 2 lessons. So if you were to do all 10 weeks, there are 2 lessons per week that you could, choose. And when I look at the 10 weeks, oftentimes I don't always run it in specifically 10 weeks. I might, change that to be shorter. So I could shorten it and make it 5 weeks, knowing that I'm going to offer more than 2 lessons in a week. I could extend that if I had a longer period of time, still using those lessons, but maybe I just use 1 lesson a week. So you can kind of flex and change it a little bit along the way to really make it work for you. So a few things that you'll notice, if you run through the weeks as they're outlined, they do kind of flow together nicely. But as you look at the curriculum, sometimes you'll say, you know what, I think I could swap weeks 7 and 6. So yeah, you could definitely switch those weeks up and make it work for the best it can for you along the way. And then if you are running them in the 10-week series, this is the estimated garden start window of time that's there in the purple with the arrows, which is going to be about week 4 or week 5. So if you're thinking about when do I want to start, this curriculum, if you wanted to follow the flow chart and then be out in the garden as well, you would start so that you're able to do some of those garden activities. This A Place to Grow Home Sweet Home is really kind of doing a site evaluation of what does that look like for that garden. And then rules are rules and schedule. It really takes us out to the garden to say, what are we going to do when we are out here planting? And then beyond that week 6 is where you kind of start, planting some of those, in this case, cool season vegetables that would be out there in the garden. So that's kind of the base curriculum. The next piece that comes is the vegetable plant feature. And so if you're following the full curriculum in week 10 or just picking and choosing, it's nice to offer individuals the opportunity to have that vegetable plant feature, which in this case for week 1, we've added that carrots would be that example. So being able to do that fresh food exposure, which is that next column in A. So, we're focused on carrots this week. We're going to try those carrots just as a fresh food exposure. So during that period of time, we're really only looking at, just that vegetable. That vegetable may also include in the next column, as we'll bring that up here in a moment, those bits and pieces of the recipe. So you'll notice that what vegetables do I choose? Well, really choose what vegetables here for your fresh or your vegetable plant feature and your fresh exposure, what you're going to be growing in the garden. So this curriculum focuses on those nutrient-dense planting components that are listed here, like the cherry tomatoes, the spinach, the sugar snap peas, and so forth. And so those vegetables are included in the recipe, that food exposure recipe as well. So you can kind of see, if I was doing a carrot tasting, then I could also do the food exposure recipe and kind of look at, using carrots in that recipe for cinnamon carrot crunch. So those 3 kind of connect together in my mind, or I find it helpful to do that fresh food exposure and then show them the recipe. Sometimes they may not fully like just the fresh food, but you put it in a recipe, you put bok choy with some strawberries in a salad, and they really like that particular salad. So maybe it didn't like the bok choy itself, but we mesh it with a dressing and some strawberries, and all of a sudden it tastes good to them. And so then we go to that last piece, which is the go components. And so you can see some of those here, as opportunities that you could try throughout. And so those I kind of pick and choose. I usually choose, what might work best for my classroom or the youth that I'm working with in that case, when I do those go pieces. All right, so with that, we're going to move to our demonstrated activities today as we kind of get started. And so I'll be kind of talking about that first activity as we go through. And when we start to look at our activities, the first one we're going to look at is titled Know and Show Sombreros. Sometimes I just call it the Know and Show hat, depending which audience I'm working with. So, being sensitive to maybe individuals' perceptions in terms of what's happening within your community clientele. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes Know and Show hat can be a nice way to kind of say what we're doing today. But the first thing that we would kind of think about in this lesson is the opportunity for youth to say, okay, what do I know about myself? So I always ask individuals in the classroom, what do we need in order to grow and survive? So what are those basics that we find within our own living that we need? And so we oftentimes come up with like a general list, right? We need food, we need shelter, we need clothing, we need a few other bits and pieces along the way. Sometimes the list is very minimal. Sometimes I get a really large list and we kind of break those down into groups. So really getting them to connect that first piece of what do I already know about myself that I need in order to grow? And then I take that next piece and I say, okay, if we look at this list and we think about plants that are growing, what do plants need in order to grow and survive? So we oftentimes find that there are some similar connections, like water, for example, is a connection that we oftentimes see on both lists or both sides of the chart. And so we'll say, okay, yes, the plant needs water to do what for that particular example. And then we come up with like air. Air is always another one that generally makes the list for both sides pretty easily. And then we talk about, okay, well, as humans, we use oxygen, and as plants, they're using carbon dioxide during that photosynthetic process. We don't necessarily talk about photosynthesis, but depending on which age group you're working with, some might have started photosynthesis in their curriculum at school, and so might be able to touch a little bit on that as well. So you can kind of dig a little deeper if you want on some of the topics, or just mention them as well. So those are kind of some examples that we go through. So using that personal experience of what do I know as an individual already, maybe pre-knowledge of what do I know about plants, and if they don't, we can start to think about things like, okay, you can say, what does a plant grow in, right, to help us get to that soil piece, or what does a plant, do they like shade or do they like sun? Trying to get those additional pieces on there, if you're kind of struggling to think about getting those other items on the list to start to think about. We don't need all of them, but it is nice to have them kind of pre-select those bits and pieces of information. So with that, I'm gonna stop share here for a moment, and we're gonna switch over and demonstrate the no and show sombrero, or the no and show hat, on how that works. So in your kits, you had some probably pipe cleaners, some feathers, some tape, some construction paper. So as we create all of this, we'll kind of walk through those steps. So give us just a moment here to kind of transition our video and demonstration, and then we will demonstrate how our know and show sombrero comes together for each youth. So I get to be your model today for our know and show sombrero. So one of the things that we're gonna first start with, and Ariel and Connie are gonna help. So it's nice to break students into at least pairs, if not three. I oftentimes find that three works better than two for this activity. So the first things you're gonna need are the newspaper and then the tape. In our case, we had a smaller newspaper that we're using today. So we're using 4 sheets. If you have a larger newspaper, it's generally just 2. But we're gonna add that newspaper to the top of our head, and then we're gonna push that down and then tape around is the first step.
So Nick's gonna help us by holding it so we don't press it. It just takes some practice. And make sure if you have kids that get a little claustrophobic that you check in with them, how are you doing down there?
I'm doing well.
Okay, good. And it may take 1 loop of tape. Kids might use a lot more tape, but I think that feels like it's fitting your head pretty well.
It is,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So our next step, we're kind of covered here, is to kind of roll up our edges and make the brim of our hat.
And the person who's sitting could help with that a little bit if we don't want to accidentally put our finger up his nose or anything. And your newspaper will probably go further with little people with smaller heads. And regular, daily news type of newspapers are going to be larger, and you could probably get a lot more brim going on there. All right. Okay, and I kind of like the free form. But this is looking pretty good.
Looking
Can you
good.
see out of your hat? You
I can, yes.
Okay.
It's serving me well.
All right. You don't have a lot of brim back here. You still want the sunblock, but
Okay. So we kind of make that hat. The goal for the hat is to add items on there of what a plant needs. So we're talking about plant needs and that soil, that oxygen, that air, that light, water. So we're gonna have youth decorate their hats with those bits and pieces that are available. So whether it's construction paper, feathers, and so forth, and they're gonna try and connect. So I'm gonna, in this case, maybe we had a feather. So I'm gonna add a feather to my hat, and that's gonna represent air because it's light, it's fluffy. That could be a reasoning that they have, or they might add other bits and pieces of color that represent water. So we are gonna take just a quick moment to add some decorations to our hat today, just so you can get some ideas along the way. So I'll let Ariel and Connie kind of add those to the hat. It can be taken off the youth's head at this point sometimes, but for our demonstration, I think we'll just leave it on my head today.
yeah, usually I think the kids will want to take their own hat off, set it down, and then just start decorating the heck out of it, right?
Yeah.
So we did send you some balloons. Warning, they are latex balloons. So if anyone has a sensitivity, don't have them handle the balloons. So I'm going to put on a balloon, and Nick can't see because he's not looking at the screen, but this is a balloon with the sun painted on it. So that's going to represent what, Nick?
Oh, that's going to represent our sun. So our light that plant needs in order to grow and move through photosynthesis, creating those sugars.
And then we gave you some fake flowers. And so I'm going to take off the leaves here. And you can use, however you want. You can glue, you can tape. For just being quick, it's probably better to use the tape because we're not going to wait for the glue to dry. So if I put some leaves up here, then these are going to represent, right, the chlorophyll that the plant needs to photosynthesize. So there's some leaves, and we might make it even more fun by putting in some pipe cleaners to also represent the chlorophyll. Nice green, capturing the sunlight there, converting it into sugars. All right, whoops.
Oh.
And they have a lot of fun with this. This is also something that we've done like at a festival type of environment, or if you just have a limited amount of space, because you can just bring all your supplies and it doesn't take a lot. So what else did we give them? We gave you feathers, we gave you string, construction paper. What else should we put on this hat, Connie? We need something to signify nutrients. I guess we could use more pipe cleaners, right? So if we, and the kids can use their imaginations. Anything can signify anything, right? So we might need some, there's some nutrients, there's some phosphorus. I don't know, making that up. With the construction paper too, we could cut out, something that signifies our soil, or something that signifies the water. So here's a bunch of blue. Maybe we cut some, something that looks like water. You want to take that on there somewhere, Connie?
I'll get it on this side.
And the other thing that I've used for this activity, and Nick, maybe you can fill in on this too, is that in the book, it's talking about using this to illustrate, what plants need to grow. But we have used this with all different kinds of themes, right? It could just be like spring gardens or summer gardens or vegetables you like to eat, and you bring seed catalogs and they rip those up and tape them on their hat. So it really can be used in a lot of different ways to teach a concept and have the kids visually represent the concept that they're trying to learn. Okay, so we have water, we have air, we have maybe nutrients, chlorophyll. We don't have anything for
Soil.
Soil. Yeah, so here's a little gold one. We'll just put that on there. And that one is going to signify your soil.
Perfect.
And it kind of looks like an antenna. So, yeah. And we've done this like at a fair or a festival, and I've seen the kids come back several hours later still wearing these hats. And then last one, let's put a flower on there just for fun. Okay, because it is about plants. There we go. Oh, that is really a beautiful, beautiful hat, Nick.
Excellent.
Maybe we want to take it off and put it
Hey.
in the DocuCam.
That does look pretty good. Nice. Yeah, let's put that under the document camera here. We'll get that kind of switched over for us. See if we can't get that in there. All right, well, there we are. So there are those items that Ariel and Connie have added. We'll try and get it mostly in there. So that's the great piece. And I like that Ariel mentioned there are a lot of ways that you can use this activity. In terms of this case, right, we were trying to say, what does a plant need in order to grow and survive? But also knowing that you could take that and move it to the next step. So we'll kind of just move this over a bit. Individuals wanted to see our bright smiling sun there along the way. So a fun activity to use to be able to get them to think about what they have for those plants. So I'm going to go ahead and switch camera here, and we'll just run through our next little piece on our no and show sombrero here. So, here's another picture of what that could look like, with that bright smiling sun. That balloon was water and nutrients, and you've got some other bits and pieces. So lots of ways to be fun and creative. But the last thing we come together for using this activity to think about what a plant needs, we just remember that plants need plants in order to survive. And so when we say plants, that would be place. So they need somewhere to grow. They need light. So we talk about, having it, at least, 8 hours of light for that plant to kind of grow and be really successful. Air. So we're talking about that carbon dioxide that plant's using, the nutrients that are in the soil that plant is absorbing through those roots. They're thirsty. So this is where water comes into play. And then our last piece on there is soil. So happy plants need plants, place, light, air, nutrients. They're thirsty, and they get that from the soil. So lots of ways to kind of think about being able to use that. So that's kind of coming back to the end after you've built your hats. I oftentimes ask individuals to share out at least one item on their hat to get everyone involved, but you could have, select just a few individuals to share all about their hats, but I like to make sure that each individual is able to share at least one thing about their hat so that everyone gets an idea of, oh, that's another great way to think about adding a visual for nutrients, and we get to hear from others as well. So I'm going to turn this over to Connie, and Connie is going to talk with you today a little bit about the food exposure and then our recipe that goes with the cinnamon carrot crunch. So take just a moment here to get us switched over.
Hello, everyone, again. I'm going to finish getting myself ready. All right. So in your curriculum book on page 139, you've got the carrot crunch recipe. So for this recipe, you're going to need your peeler if you're going to peel your carrots. Today, for time purposes, I'm doing pre-shredded, but you can do too. And then you're going to need a knife, your cutting board, your large mixing bowl, your spoons, and your measuring cup. You're also going to need your other ingredients here. So you got the carrots, your apples. I'm using these measured out containers of yogurt. This is a low-fat yogurt. and already pre-sliced celery, pre-soaked raisins, and 4 tablespoons of lemon juice, as well as the cinnamon. And you would have received in your kit some of these items. Okay, so you're going to have to provide your carrots, your apples, your celery, your yogurt, and the knife. So, okay. So if you're following along with this recipe, hopefully it'll cooperate with me. Just carrots in the bowl. It calls for 4 medium carrots shredded. You can make this simple by using prepackaged, or you could get a food processor and that would work as well. Okay. I think I'm going to have to take this glove off because I might end up having some issues here. I've got really small hands. And these gloves are made for big people. And so if you have any damaged parts on your item there, you can just cut that out. I'm leaving the skins on because it adds extra fiber. These have already been pre-washed. One thing I didn't mention early on was that you need to make sure you have a clean surface and that your hands are clean. Mine are clean. This is also a real easy way to do something too. Normally in the Food Network shows they time lapse these things. If you're a big foodie like me, you know what I'm talking about. So right here, I'm just getting rid of all the seeds and the core. You can use a core if you wanted to, whatever's easiest for you.
You just call for 1 apple for this recipe.
It calls for 2 medium apples. Thank you. And 4 carrots. 1 celery rib. Oh, thank you. Trash can was absent from the locale here, so it makes it a little challenging.
And if you're composting, you could always compost those extra pieces or
Yeah,
feed them to the class bunny or something else.
those bunnies would sure love the apples. So.
So I would think that depending on the age of the kids, they could use an apple core, or they could grate the carrots. You know, just want to be careful about giving them knives, right? Depending on their age.
Yeah, definitely.
There's a lot of steps in this recipe that even really young kids can do, like soaking the raisins, like measuring and stirring.
All right, so now I'm going to add in the celery. This measured out to 1/4 cup. Yeah, I'm sorry, I got to get this glove off me. It's too big. 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. And I used the bottled lemon juice, the 100% pure lemon juice for this. So this calls for 3/4 cups of the pre-soaked raisins. You you want to make this recipe the night before, you don't have to soak the raisins because it'll pretty much clump up on its own. And this is called for 3/4 cup or 6 ounces of the yogurt. This is 5-ounce tub. And so basically I'm just going to use a portion of this.
Vanilla or plain?
It's plain, no, excuse me, it's the low-fat vanilla.
Okay.
And then you're going to need about a teaspoon of the cinnamon, which is most of what I've got here. Seems like an awful big teaspoon. Okay. And then you just mix it together with a spoon. Oops. And that is pretty much the recipe.
And in your kits, we gave you a mixing bowl that can also be used as a storage container in the refrigerator. But I would wash it before you use it.
So that is the carrot crunch recipe. So in your curriculum, you will also see with your children, and it's just basically doing some basic math and a little bit of science. So it says carrots are a great source of what vitamin? Vitamin A, right? Vitamin A is very important for your eyes, okay? And it's also very important for your immune system. Now, number 2, on average, how many pounds of carrots does the average person eat? 10 pounds. Is that not wild or what? And in 5 years, a person would consume 50 pounds of carrots. Yikes. Now, I already mentioned this, the celery, that 1 rib of celery measured out to 1/4 cup. It might be a little bit more depending on how big your celery stalk is, or maybe a little bit less depending on how much you use. But that one was 1/4 cup. And last but not least, which is bigger, the teaspoon or the tablespoon? Tablespoon. So you get 3 teaspoons into a tablespoon. That is it for the cinnamon carrot crunch recipe. I hope that your kids enjoy this. Please give us some feedback on what they thought. And I'm going to turn it back over to my computer operator over here.
So one of the things as we bring up the visual of cinnamon carrot crunch here is that fresh food exposure. So, in this week, perhaps you also showed them the carrot could have been a fresh food exposure that you're maybe going to be growing in your garden. So it would have them test that carrot, by itself so that they're able to see what does just that carrot taste like. You can do it with a variety of things along the way, but you'll notice in the journals. So when you get to the journals for the Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go, there is a little rubric, if you will, a little taster rubric where kids can grade how they, indicate the taste, the smell, the sight, the sound of the crunch. And so they get to be really involved in that fresh food exposure of grading that particular vegetable on if they like it or maybe don't like it. So a nice way to connect all of those bits and pieces together.
All right, we're going to move to the next section.
recipe looked so yummy. Oh my goodness. Good job, Connie. That was so yummy looking. And then Nick, I hope that you wear your beautiful hat the rest of the day because that looks good on you. And Ariel, Connie, wonderful, beautiful job making that hat. So we are going to be reviewing next the week 2 activity called The Plant Parts We Eat. And you can find this activity on page 10 of your Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go curriculum. For this activity, you'll want to have on hand a copy of the book Tops and Bottoms by Janet Stevens. That has been provided in the curriculum kit that you received if you were an educator in the Out of School Into the Garden program. You'll also need a dry erase board or poster works fine. And then also a marker. And then for your participating students, each of them should have either a pen or a pencil on hand. And then later on in the activity, when we split them into pairs, they'll need a copy of the Plant Parts web handout. And as you can see in the video above here, there we go. We have a beautifully laminated copy of the handout with the plant tabs. Connie, thank you for all your hard work and preparation and providing that to our educators. So thanks for that. So you'll see the handout, the web on the right, and then the little plant tabs tags that you can cut out. They are laminated, so you can use those for future use if you're, together with your classroom out in the garden, you want to do this activity. Another alternative is to scan the copy of the web, and that's on page 14 of your curriculum. So our goal for this activity is going to be to help children be able to classify some of the foods that they're seeing and eating based on the part of the plant that it is, and then also that they would be able to identify the 6 edible plant parts. For this lesson, we actually begin by reading aloud. This is personally one of my favorite books, Tops and Bottoms by Janet Stevens. And before we begin the read aloud, you might just ask your class, which vegetables in the illustrations do you recognize? So just have them be thinking about that while you're reading. And then of course, provide them an opportunity at the end of the read aloud to share afterwards. There's also some discussion questions that follow the book reading, and we'll get to them in a minute. But for now, I want to jump into this amazing story about Hare and Bear. So once upon a time, there lived a very lazy bear who had lots of money and lots of land. His father had been a hard worker and a smart business bear, and he had given all his wealth to his son. But all Bear wanted to do was sleep. Not far down the road lived a hare. Although Hare was clever, he sometimes got into trouble. He had once owned land too, but now he had nothing. He had lost a risky bet with a tortoise and had sold all of his land to Bear to pay off the debt. Hare and his family were in very bad shape. "The children are so hungry, Father Hare. We must think of something," Mrs. Hare cried one day. So Hare and Mrs. Hare put their heads together and cooked up a plan. The next day, Hare hopped down the road to Bear's house. Bear, of course, was asleep. "Hello, Bear, wake up. It's your neighbor, Hare, and I have an idea." Bear opened one eye and grunted. "We can be business partners," Hare said. "All we need is this field right here in front of your house. I'll do the hard work of planting and harvesting, and we can split the profit right down the middle. Yes, sir, Bear, we're in this together. I'll work and you sleep." "Huh?" said Bear. "So what will it be, Bear?" asked Hare. "The top half or the bottom half? It's up to you. Tops or bottoms?" Let's see," Bear said with a yawn. "I'll take the top half, Hare. Right, tops." Hare smiled. "It's a done deal, Bear." So Bear went back to sleep, and Hare and his family went to work. Hare planted, and Mrs. Hare watered, and everyone weeded. Bear slept as the crops grew. When it was time for the harvest, Hare called out, "Wake up, Bear. You get the tops, and I get the bottoms." Hare and his family dug up the carrots, the radishes, and the beets. Hare plucked off all the tops, tossed them into a pile for Bear, and put the bottoms aside for himself. Bear stared at his pile. "But Hare, all the best parts are in your half." "You chose the tops, Bear," Hare said. "Now, Hare, you've tricked me. You plant this field again, and this season I want the bottoms." Hare agreed. "It's a done deal, Bear." So Bear went back to sleep, and Hare and his family went to work. They planted, watered, and weeded. Bear slept as the crops grew. When it was time for the harvest, Hare called out, "Wake up, Bear. You get the bottoms, and I get the tops." Hare and his family gathered up the lettuce, the broccoli, and the celery. Hare pulled off the bottoms for Bear and put the tops in his own pile. Bear looked at his pile and scowled. "Hare, you have cheated me again." "But Bear," Hare said, "you wanted the bottoms this time." Bear growled, "You plant this field again, Hare. You've tricked me twice, and you owe me one season of both tops and bottoms." "You're right, poor old Bear," sighed Hare. "It's only fair that you get both the tops and bottoms this time. It's a done deal, Bear." The illustrations are so fun. So Bear went back to sleep, and Hare and his family went to work. They planted, watered, and weeded, and then watered and weeded some more. Bear slept as the crops grew. When it was time for the harvest, Hare called out, "Wake up, Bear. This time you get the tops and the bottoms." There in front of Bear's house lay a high field of corn. Hare and his family yanked up every corn stalk. Hare tugged off the roots at the bottom and the tassels at the top and put them in a pile for Bear. Then he carefully collected the ears of corn in the middle and placed them in his own pile. Bear rubbed his eyes and watched. "See, Bear, you get the tops and the bottoms. I get the middles. Yes, sir, Bear, it's a done deal." By now, Bear was wide awake. "That's it, Hare," he hollered. "From now on, I'll plant my own crops and take the tops, bottoms, and middles." Hare and his family scooped up the corn and hopped down the road toward home. Bear never again slept through a season of planting and harvesting. Hare bought back his land with the profit from the crops, and he and Mrs. Hare opened a vegetable stand. Although Hare and Bear learned to live happily as neighbors, they never became business partners again. And that's it. So we hope you enjoyed that reading as much as we enjoyed that story. After you read that book to your class, you'll have some discussion questions that you might ask them. So for example, we might ask, what were the edible parts of each plant? The tops, the middles, or the bottoms? And then you might listen to their answers and come to the conclusion that in the story, we learned that we can eat all parts of the plants. It just depends on which ones they are. So the bottoms or roots of plants like carrots and beets are edible. And then the tops or stems of leaves and flowers of plants like celery, lettuce, and broccoli are edible. Then we might ask our class, what were some of the differences or different parts of the plants in the story? So we might hear their answers, and then you can help them along by providing some examples of different plant parts like roots, flowers, leaves, stems, seeds, and fruits. Next, you're going to move on to creating a plant parts chart for your class. And you can use a poster or a dry erase board to essentially help create the list of the six basic plant parts. You'll create those in a column. So as we know from the reading and then also from this activity, we are going to classify our 6 plant parts as roots, stems, leaves, flowers, fruits, and seeds. We are going to ask the students to share what they know about the function of each part and to write that in the corresponding section on the board or on their poster. So if you look on page 11 of your curriculum, you will see that helpful guide that's describing the function of each part. And so we see, for example, that roots help anchor the plant and absorb water and nutrients from the soil. And then, it explains stems, leaves, flowers, fruits, and seeds too. And now in the last part of this activity, you will get to divide your students out into groups of 2. Each pair will get a copy of the plant parts web handout. And of course, that example of which has been provided and laminated in your kit for you. In the classroom, though, you might, like I said, scan and copy the sheet so that each pair has their own individual worksheet to work from. You can give them a little bit of time also to work on cutting out each of the plant tags because they'll need those to be separate as they connect them to the appropriate section on the web. So once they've cut out all of their plant tags, you can ask them to place the plant tags next to the plant parts that they think it represents. So on the worksheet, you'll see, for example, the plant tags: corn, radishes, sunflower seeds. What I would do is I would place maybe the corn on the seed because we eat the kernels of the corn and we know that the kernels are seeds. And then I would place the radishes on the root part of the web because I know that we eat the root of the radish plant. And then finally, I might, if I have the sunflower seeds tag in front of me, I know, oh, sunflower seeds, that's a seed. So that would go in the seed section of the web. Once all the groups have finished, have them discuss the chart and then each plant part and give them a little bit of time to glue their plant tags to the page when you've discussed it as a class and been able to verify where each of the tags goes. And I love this activity because it can be like really fun and also really surprising for the students and the teachers alike to learn that some of the vegetables that they know of don't necessarily come from the plant parts that they might have thought. If you look on page 12 of your curriculum, you'll find a really fun table of foods and their unlikely plant parts. So like, who knew that we, for example, eat the flower of the broccoli plant? So there's a lot of really fun examples like that in that table, and you can certainly share those fun examples with the kids. They have a lot of fun learning about the different plant parts that they eat. You should also take the opportunity at the end of this lesson to just point out that these edible parts, they give us many of the nutrients that our bodies need to grow strong and healthy. So definitely take a moment there to emphasize that. And then, each of the plants on the students' plant part webs, they really, all of them together provide a huge variety of healthy and tasty foods. So just also emphasize that all the fruits and vegetables that they see on there are all really healthy foods for them to eat. The other wonderful part about this activity in particular is that it is a wonderful opportunity to extend children's learning and service. So this lesson can be a great starting point for the service learning project that's called the Plant Parts Canned Food Drive, as it's named in the book here. And this is really an opportunity for your students to help collect canned goods to donate to a local food bank. And what they can do as the donations are received, have the students categorize each of the cans by their 6 plant parts that they learned about. So if they receive like a can of corn, those can go into the seeds, and if they get a can of something else, have them work through what that plant actually looks like, what part we eat, and then categorize it by putting it into a box that's labeled by the plant parts. So if you look in your curriculum on page 13, they have a great picture right there of the kids holding boxes that say leaves, stems, fruits, seeds, and seeds, roots and seeds. Also, if you're interested in learning more about how to do this and host this can drive, there's some really great resources on the JMG kids.us/LGEG site. You can access those online resources that include promotional signs and letters to parents. So that's our activity for Plant Parts We Eat. And now we'll get to hear from Ariel about some paper towel gardening.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm happy to get to talk to you now about an activity that I have loved doing for a long time because it really requires minimal supplies. It teaches us several different concepts, and it really gets us going into the actual planting of the garden. And especially if you're in a little bit of a cold season area, which I know that almost all of our gardeners in this project are, and in many parts of Idaho, it's a way to do something to plan ahead for the garden, even when the weather outside is anything but spring-like. So we're going to do paper towel gardening, and you can find this in section or under week 3 on page 23 in the manual if you're following along. And what you'll need for this activity, we sent you in your kit, we sent you some napkins, and we're going to explain why we like to do this with napkins as opposed to paper towels, if possible. We also sent you some glue, a ruler, and a packet of carrot seeds. So that's pretty much what you need to do this activity with the students. And I'll walk through some of the ways that you might use it, and then we'll actually demonstrate doing it. You can do this with any kind of seed, but we'll talk about why it may not be as fun or take as long if you use certain crops. It's going to be teaching about using fractions and division, also spatial concepts about how to space things in the garden. And then it's going to get us thinking about what do we need to know before we go and plant a seed. There is some thinking that we have to do ahead of time. So I will stop the share, and we'll move over to the document camera. If you give me just a second. And I'm going to show you what we're going to do. So you will need a few things in addition to the supplies that you sent. And one of them is the garden planting chart, which is on page 27 in your manual. And this goes through what the different crops might need, how many you would plant per paper towel or napkin, and a little bit about how deep you plant it, how many days to wait until harvest, and how many days to wait until emergence. So this is great for planning ahead in the garden journals about what you're going to do with these crops once they're growing. All right, so I'm going to get over here and make sure that I'm positioned where you can see me. All right. Okay, you can see it. Perfect. So I mentioned I like using paper napkins instead of paper towels, and that's because if you've noticed, paper towels have gotten smaller, and they've also you've got a lot of selecta size, and so finding a nearly 12-inch square of paper towel is a little bit harder. Some of the industrial paper towels might work, but I like the napkins because they're also really thin and they break down really fast. And what we're actually doing here is we're creating a kind of seed tape. I don't know if you've ever seen seed tape, but pretty much it's seeds that are affixed to a biodegradable substrate, which makes it easier to plant very small seeds like carrots and ensure that they're going to come up. So for this activity, you need your napkin or your paper towel. You need some white washable non-toxic glue, and then you need some seeds. And for this activity, we're going to use carrots, mostly because you can fit so many carrots onto our paper towel or our napkin. So before we begin, we want to think about, okay, what are we planting? How many would we plant in a square foot? And if you look at the chart on page 27, right, you've got a few different things. So you might talk to kids about, okay, if we had a watermelon, right, how many watermelons would we fit in this square? And the answer is probably 1 for every 4 napkins, right? Because watermelon plants get really, really big. So that was what I was saying. Kids may be like, I want to grow watermelons. But if you do this activity with a watermelon, you're going to glue 1 seed in the center and you're going to be done. And that doesn't take as much time. And it requires almost no math. So we probably want to save those larger crops for just planting them in the ground and not doing it this way. The same with a cabbage. You plant a cabbage about 1 every 12 inches or so. So again, there would be 1 cabbage seed in the napkin and you're done. Carrots and spinach are a lot more fun. The spinach, if you look at our chart, we can fit 9 on our napkin. So that would take a little bit longer. But carrots are super fun because we need to put 16 carrots on this napkin. So how, it's a 16, right? How do we make 16 squares on this napkin? Well, the other thing I like about napkins is they're already folded in quarters. So we've already got 4, right? So you talk with the kids about how would we fit 16 on here? Well, we're going to do that by folding the napkin again and again so that we have 16 squares, right? And depending on the age of the kids, this may or be easier or harder, right? So you might help them with this part, or we just talk about how would we space 16 seeds out on our napkin. All right, so now you can kind of see that on the document camera. Now I have 16 squares. Now, if you wanted, if you had kids that like had a hard time maybe with some of their fine motor skills, you could come in and you could make a dot in the center, or if they had any kind of visual impairment that made it harder to see, you could pre-dot this so that they knew where to place their glue dots. But if they have fairly good fine motor skills, they can go right to the gluing. All right, so then they would come out and they could make glue dots. Now, the other thing is on our seed packet, right, we have information about the spacing of these. And so these say that plants should be about 1 to 2 inches apart. So we could come through and we could make sure using our ruler. So these are going to actually be a little bit farther apart, which is fine. If you've got a big carrot, that gives them enough room to grow. This activity is really about thinking about not crowding things into the garden. Okay, so then we come in and we make our glue dots, right? And if you'd already put a marker dot there, it's much easier to know where to put that glue dot. Okay. And then we would get our seeds. And again, carrots are a good one for this because they're very small. They're often we have to thin them after we planted them. And this way we don't have to do that. Now, this is harder for a grown-up, I think, to find your individual seeds, especially if you have a little arthritis or bad vision, which I have a little bit of both, but we're going to do this. So now we've got our 1 carrot seed. You may end up having to thin. Kids are much better about being able to get just 1 seed in there, right? Yep, I didn't quite hit my glue dot, right? So harder than it looks. Get off there. If you really wanted to be precise, you could use tweezers, I guess. I'm just hoping it's going to get near enough to the glue to hold on to it. And I'm not going to make you suffer through with me. Another way to do it could be to sprinkle from above and then shake some of the extra off, but then you may still have to do some thinning later. Oh, those 2 turned out really well. I got those 2 in there. All right, and that one missed the mark, so I'll put another one in. Okay. So you could also, if you were doing this with a group and the kids wanted to plant more things than carrots, you could look at all of your, say, early season crops, like your small lettuces. I'm looking on the chart, some other things that require several to a napkin. would be the carrots. It would be onions, like green onions, radishes. You can do 16 per, and radishes are a bigger seed. Turnips, you can get 9. Spinach, you can get 9 onto a napkin. And beans, you can get 9 or 8, depending on if they're pole or bush beans. Right, so you could split the groups up, and each group could work on a different crop that you plan to grow in your garden, so that you don't just have, 28 sets of carrot seed napkins. Right, so you would set those aside and let them dry, and then you could probably very gently fold them up or roll them up, and then wait until it is time to put them out in the garden. And the fun thing about doing this with carrots, turnips, radishes, or lettuces is that as soon as your soils are hitting about 40 degrees consistently, you can probably go plant these outside. And then you want to refer to the chart about the depth, right? Whether you're going to bury this napkin 1 inch below the soil or 2 inches below the soil. Now, come planting time, it does get a little bit more complicated than planting a seed, because you're not making an individual hole for the seed. You're making kind of a wide area where you're going to plant this whole napkin if you're planting in a grid. I guess, cut out the squares and do it that way. That would be a little bit more complicated. But the idea is that you will plant this, the napkin will dissolve, and the glue will dissolve, and the seeds will grow. So I really think this is a fun activity for just learning about the space that's required in a garden. And the other thing you could do too, which would be fun, is once you had all of these done, and here I'm going to do another really important part, right, is that we have to label everything, because I tell you what, I may not know what that seed is later. I might say, did we plant dill? Is it carrot? Is it parsley? Right, these plants in these same families have very similar seeds. Okay, so what you could do is you could lay this out. Oh, you didn't see what I was doing. I was labeling it, and it's backwards and upside down on my camera. You could lay these out once they were dry and actually see how big your garden was going to need to have, right? What would be the footprint of your garden? So lots of different ways to use this in the garden planning process and in thinking ahead about the future of the garden. All right, and I'm going to come back over here. So we did send you, I believe, copies of the garden journals. And so if you're giving those out to the kids, this is a really good thing to note down in the journal, like how many seed napkins did we prepare? How much space are we going to need in our garden? You could get out the big measuring tape if you have one and figure out, how many feet of garden bed you're going to need, depending again on the age of the students. They may be ready to do that kind of calculation. They may be small enough that just putting the seeds on the napkin is a big enough activity for them. All right, so that was paper towel gardening using napkins. We'll pause for just a minute and we'll move into the next step.
Well, I believe that our next step is going to be, since we have a little time, to wrap up our training today on an inspirational note. So we have picked out a few videos that we'd love to share with all of you. The first video we're going to be looking at, and I'm going to pull it up here before we start. Okay, are we all able to see that? I think so. So the first video, oh, thank you, Nick. So the first video that we are going to watch today will just give you a sense of what the Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go program looks like in action. So here we're going to go see a few elementary classes in Bexar County, and they're located in the greater San Antonio area. And we'll get to see a little insight into how they've implemented these activities in their own classrooms.
We're not hearing any sound yet though right
get
now.
to take this
there-
program to 10
there we
different
go.
schools where we visit them for 10 weeks in a row, and we teach the kids about gardening, nutrition, and about how to be more physically active. And it's with this easy to follow 10-week program that we can teach the kids how to make better food choices. We can also teach them about plant life cycles, insect life cycles, things like how to walk a little bit more with their families at home, take it home to their families and be more involved with their families, selecting better produce at the store and cooking healthier recipes at home, and walking a little bit more with their families.
Low-fat cheddar cheese.
With the garden that we helped them grow at their schools, it was a 4x8 bed, and they grew vegetables like carrots, lettuce, Swiss chard, potatoes, tomatoes, and broccoli. And those vegetables were selected directly from the Learn, Grow, Eat, Go curriculum. The curriculum provides a garden planting guide, as well as the top 12 vegetables to be growing for the Learn, Grow, Eat, Go curriculum. And these vegetables were selected not only because they're a little bit easier to grow in the garden, but also because they have a high nutrition value. And so we're teaching the kids about which type of vegetables to eat and which ones are healthier, like the darker greens, or like if they're going to eat the potatoes, maybe not fry them, but kind of bake them. As they're growing them in the garden, they're also learning about how the plants grow, what it takes to grow a garden, and also to be more of a team and to working together. They're splitting responsibilities like watering and weeding, and also designing their garden that they have there at their schools. The really big activity that we do with them every single week to kind of get the kids acclimated, kind of like get them used to eating more vegetables, we did something called a 5 senses food tasting, where they got, like for example, a carrot, and not only did they taste the carrot, but they also judged the carrot on the sight, and then they smelled it, and then they, as they bit down on it, they tested the sound of it, you know, what does it feel like? So they learned to kind of be more comfortable with vegetables, especially ones like that they've never had before, like Swiss chard. Things like they got used to seeing what it is, what it looks like, and so hopefully they can recognize it at the grocery store and purchase it, and then take it home, and with the 5 senses food tasting, they'll know what it tastes like raw, as well as cooked or mixed in with a salad with other vegetables like spinach or things like cranberries, and just how to eat it and be more comfortable with the vegetables. The Swiss chard was ready to harvest just in time for the Swiss chard and spinach sunflower seed salad that we made with them. And so some of the schools got to harvest the Swiss chard and they ate it directly from their garden. Of course, we harvested and we brought it to our offices, we prepped it, we cleaned it, and then we took it to the schools, and that's where the kids got to do the 5 senses fresh food tasting, as well as the salad with them.
So that is an example of how, how this can really look on a larger scale. And then we also want to, end today again on just an inspirational note. We want to give you a few fun ideas for what your school garden could look like. So I will now play this one. So if you are still, there we go. So if you're still looking for ideas for ways to spend some of the reimbursement funds that are provided through the Out of School Into the Garden program, check that video out and see what you like and see if there's anything in there that you can use, and hopefully include in your own garden spaces in your own classrooms. So I think we are now wrapping up here. We're finally at the end. I did want to just thank Ariel, Nick, and Connie for demonstrating so beautifully those awesome activities from the curriculum. We hope that if you're watching today, that you were also inspired to try some of these activities yourself in your own classrooms. So thank you everyone for joining us. Did you guys want to put in maybe a few last words before we sign off?
Thank you for joining. We hope that you'll enjoy your hat so that you'll have a fun hat to wear for upcoming activities in the garden, maybe.
And I would say make the activities your own. They're all open to interpretation and tweaking to fit the kids that you're working with and your site. So have fun and get creative with it and enjoy.
And I hope you enjoy all the recipes. There's a lot of great recipes in the curriculum, and this carrot crunch salad that we made for you today is just one of many that are delicious.
And don't forget story time. And thank you, Alea, for reading us that story. That was a highlight for me to sit back and enjoy that really funny and instructional story.
My pleasure. Well, thank you, everyone. Yeah, we hope to hear from all you educators soon and get to learn about what you are doing in your own classrooms. We hope that this will be a help to you and support for your own learning and getting the kids excited and enthusiastic about gardening. So thanks again, and we will hear from you soon. All right, bye-bye, guys. Bye. I hope you wear that hat all day, Nick. All right, bye-bye.
Absolutely.
Get a picture.